God, I really like. It's really frustrating for me because it's like the whole Trump thing and the whole moment we're in now. It's all about a culture war. Like that's what it's really about. It's not about politics or policy or anything. It's really a culture war. And what you have here, and this is why everyone gets so into the kneeling for the national anthem thing, because it's symbolic of two cultures. And to me, it's like I see the worst in both, which is really frustrating. So it's like the left-wing thing is just this bash America with no perspective, like no fucking perspective at all. So it's like, yeah, right. So they'll be protesting, say, like cops being shot or something like that, which you can say, certainly there are legitimate cases of that. And I'm a person who believes we have like a real police problem in America. And we have like just insane amounts of arrests for nonviolent crimes and really fucked up shit.
I agree.
Mass incarceration, all these fucked up things. That being said, like there's also justifiable shootings that cops do.
There's
also,
that
too. But so you have these people taking a knee, but it's kind of like symbolic to people who aren't on the left of this culture of like everything over on the left is just like anti-America, anti-capitalist, anti-white man, anti-man in general, and anti-Western civilization with no perspective.
Right.
Like no perspective of like, just like America's a white supremacist country. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like compared to what? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's like, but it's like when they say like we live in a rape culture. It's like, what does that mean? If I'm like, we live in a robbery culture. Like there are robberies, but compared to what? So if you're going to say we're a white supremacist culture, to me it's kind of like saying, America's a poor country. I mean, I suppose compared to some richer country in the future that's figured some shit out that we haven't, compared to everything else that's ever existed, we're a rich country. So if you're talking white supremacists, it's like, well, no, by and large, we're probably the best, like melting pot, most diverse, most inclusive, most like we feel more guilty for the sins of our past than pretty much any other country I could think of. And I don't know any country that like, it's like America was founded by conquest of the Native Americans. It's like, right. And so was every single other country. And every country had slavery and every country had all these things. It's not, no one 150 years ago wasn't fucked up.
There's
that doesn't
no
exist.
utopia.
Right. And so if you have some perspective, the left-wing thing gets pretty frustrating after a while. However, then on the Trump side, so I've kind of been more sympathetic to the right than the left probably over the last year and a half, because I really do see like the issue of our time becoming this like, are you for free speech or against free speech? That to me is like really...
Right, because we don't really figure things out unless we get to debate them.
Yes.
We can't have forbidden topics, and we can't have topics that are supercharged to the point where you can't have a position on them, and you can't explore them.
They're
too powerful.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it's one reason. I think there's many reasons, but that's one of the most important, like why we need free speech.
Yeah.
Because unless you come from the position of I have everything 100% correct, like then maybe you need to have a conversation and someone has a conversation back with you, because odds are you don't have everything 100% correct.
It's their correct versus your correct. Like their correct is gender equality, their correct is transgender rights, their correct is socialism, their correct is like, and if obviously I'm talking about people far left, not talking about you if you're listening. I'm talking about the hypothetical extreme far left person that is protesting Ben Shapiro on Berkeley campus, calling him a Nazi.
But this isn't just right. It's not. You're talking about a hypothetical person, but obviously this is happening in reality. There's lots of them, and there's enough to the point where like it's like this real thing where so the great threat to free speech in our time isn't coming from the state, which by the way, like as a libertarian, that would be more comfortable to my narrative. Like that's what I've been thinking for years is the great threat to free speech. But no, it's coming from this left-wing culture that says, like Ben Shapiro can't speak, Milo Yiannopoulos can't speak, Condoleezza Rice can't speak. Like all look, if Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson need to be silenced, I mean, my only problem with those two is that they're too moderate. Like these are not bigots. These are intellectuals making an intellectual argument, and they can't even speak.
Yeah.
So it's very scary. And then the other thing I would just say on this left-wing culture, and this is what Kaepernick kind of like embodies to me, is just it's this frustrating ignorance, like this clown. So you'll be protesting police brutality and mass incarceration, and then like you'll put a Castro image on your jacket. Like, I mean, come on, man.
Understand.
Come on, dude.
You
You can't stand up for something and swing and miss that big.
Yeah.
Like that's so like you got to research a little bit. I mean, do 5 minutes. All the information's on your phone. Like I just don't. So there's that, and I get being against that. And I want to be like on the free speech side. And I see a lot of these guys like who I'll bring up, like Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, guys you've had on your show, who I really admire a lot because they're fighting against that, and Jordan Peterson fighting against that authoritarian PC, anti-free speech stuff. So I kind of am more sympathetic to the right. But then there's this thing with the NFL and it really just reminds me of all the cultural aspects of the right that I hate, which is when, first of all, I'm sorry, as someone who's standing for freedom of speech, I'm pretty fucking troubled by the President of the United States, the man who's in control of the most powerful army and the military in the history of humanity, coming out and saying, I think if someone takes a knee, they should be fired. Now, that may not be writing a law against speech, but that's pretty fucking chilling to have like the government telling you, hey, you know what would please me? Is if you started firing people when they spoke out against me. I don't like that. And this fucking right wing, like, praise the flag, and if you say anything against it, it's like religious. Like, it's blasphemy.
It is
to criticize
religious.
the troops or criticize the country. Like, fuck that.
Yeah, it is a power issue. What I was going to say earlier is that when you were talking about the state, when you were talking about the fear of the state and the censorship coming from the state, it's the same thing because the state is just power. And the far left is power too. And it's power with shame and with blogs and with protests. And it is the power that they're trying to exercise to get you to behave the way they want you to. And the right does the same thing. I think what we should have, if we're gonna really keep doing this whole we're a country thing, we should have like an armistice when, then this is, I think, with reasonable people have an issue with this idea of desecrating the flag. Because the flag is just a flag and it's not important. But what is important is that we treat each other like we're a team and we look out for each other and we're all together and we're all united together. We shouldn't be, if we have an issue, our issue should be with communist dictatorships across the world that have nuclear weapons that are holding their people captive.
Right.
Like if there was ever a time to look at a country and go, wow, this is a country that is in an unjust position and it's a really terrifying dilemma that you have this murderous dictator who's in control of nuclear weapons and he has an entire country of people enslaved, which is essentially what's going on in North Korea, right?
It's basically like a giant hostage situation.
That's a real giant issue to us. It's not whether or not transgender people can use the fucking the men's room or the women's room. That's not our issue. That's a cultural conversation, and that cultural conversation should be calm and we should be friendly to each other because we're supposed to be on the fucking same team.